tube is the one that always takes a couple moments. That is up. Right. Perfect timing. Eric, you're muted, but can you hear us?
How about now? No. How about now?
Huh. Eric, I see that you're talking. I don't know that we're hearing you.
No.
Is anybody hearing Eric?
No.
No,
I do hear Eric.
You do.
Yeah. I mean, it's low in volume, but you hear him.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, Eric.
You can hear me.
Why? You all don't hear him, do you? Huh.
Sorry about that. Maybe can.
Eric, do you have a volume on your mic?
Yes. Try the volume higher.
Dan, do you hear Eric?
not really. Very fair, very faintly.
How about now?
He just said, what about now? I can hear him.
You can hear me, so anybody else? No.
He just asked if anybody else can hear him.
We can. Trying to see if there's any adjustment that I can make.
Try the mic again. Try the mic.
I mean, I can pick something up in the background, but I just
Wait, I see.
can't hear.
Hello? No? How much are down on the bottom?
Hmm.
Dan, can you hear me? Dan? No?
But you can hear him, Rosario, huh?
Ed is asking if you can hear him. Can
Yeah,
you
we
hear him? Yeah, I can hear him.
You can hear him, huh?
Yeah. I'm just reporting what he's saying.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how. Because I can hear Rosario, Dan, I can hear you.
Modern technology. How about now? It's got I have a yellow box around me. Now, can you guys hear me now?
He's asking if he can hear you now.
Yeah, just barely. I mean, like I can only hear just a little bit of the, like, I can tell that he's talking, but I couldn't tell you what he's saying.
Well, okay. Maybe because I didn't pay my taxes. Oh, no,
Yeah, you have to turn if you're going to speak, please make sure your light is on. Yeah.
Can you guys hear Eric talking? Dan?
I saw him, but I could barely hear
I
him.
hear you now. And isn't that crazy? Can you hear me now?
How about you, Rosario? Can you hear Eric loud and clear?
Well, I cannot hear him loud, but I can understand what he's saying. I can catch almost 90% of what he's saying. It's keeping repeating. If you guys can hear him now, you can hear him now. I guess he's making some adjustment to his system and hoping that he can deliver his voice to you.
We can barely hear him. I mean, very little.
Okay, how about this? Can I call Steve on the phone and put it on speaker?
So he's suggesting to call Steve on the phone, if he can broadcast through the speakerphone somehow to the room. If he can call on a phone.
Can you come over here, please?
Any possibility into that?
All right, let's try that. Hey, Eric, can you send me an email with your phone number, please? Or you can dial, you could dial 610-356-0200, extension 114.
Can you repeat the telephone number, please?
Yes.
Think.
610-356-0200, extension 144. It will ring directly here, won't it, George? Yeah, that's what I thought. Rosario, I love your background. Is that actually your home?
It is my kitchen, yes.
Oh, it's gorgeous wood.
It's the fireplace of the kitchen.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I saw your dog in the window.
Yeah, because he likes to look at me when I'm here.
He's outside.
Yes, yes,
That was interesting.
yeah. He stays outside. He stays in the barn with the chickens. That's how the chickens stay alive.
I was gonna say, he probably keeps them.
He's a sheepdog, so it's a working dog. He keeps deers away and foxes away, and you are quiet this way.
Awesome.
Sorrow, maybe you can.
Is he having trouble with the phone number?
Did you get the phone number, Eric? Eric, did you get the phone number? Now I cannot hear myself. I don't know what's happening. I cannot hear you, Eric, anymore.
I'm gonna type in the phone number, Eric, to the chat for you. Eric, can you, how about trying this? How about you send me your phone number in an email, and that way you don't have to state it publicly. I can make sure he's not.
I can no longer hear him
Yeah.
if he's saying anything. Before I could.
You have it. Different on every phone. Why am I not getting it dialed on? George. Spanish. It's coming up. I think it's Spanish. And now I can't get it to hang up. You get an outside line with a number? No, no.
Sorry.
It's coming up as not in service. Um, Eric, through the chat, can you hear us? Can you answer back in the chat? Do you have that? Do you have that function?
I wonder if somebody else can speak up through that microphone to understand whether the system was just there is not enough volume.
Yeah, I mean, like I can hear you, I can hear Dan, everybody in the room can
We
hear,
can hear each other. Yes, it's just
we can't hear him. Eric, I have two suggestions. One suggestion would be for you to go leave the meeting and come back in and see if that helps as a possibility. The second option, I believe there is a phone number. If you wish to dial in by phone, you could do that. But let me see. You just sent me a phone number. Let me see if I can do that. Let me real quick. I'll try that one. Hello? Hello? Can you all hear? Go ahead and speak again, Eric. Okay. It's still a little bit crackly, but we'll try to see if we can make that work and make out what you're saying, okay? All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. This is the Bartram Bridge Joint Preservation Board reorg meeting. We'll take public comment in one of four ways tonight. If you had dropped something off at the blue drop box that's out in front of the township building, that was checked earlier. There was no public comment. If you are on the Zoom call, which currently we do not have anyone except for the board members on, you could raise your hand or call in using the telephone method. You can also send public comment to the Newtown Township public comment email address, which is publiccomment@newtowntownship.org. Public comment being all one word at newtowntownship.org. And I will say I just checked it and there's nothing in there right at the moment. I will watch it throughout the meeting. So we're calling this meeting to order. I will do a quick roll call and then have you all select your temporary chair and then we'll move on from there. So Ed Johnston, Eric Durst. Yep. Rosario.
right.
Daniel? Or
Yes.
Dan? Bart?
Yes.
All right, and then from the township, you have Bill Hagan from Willistown and George Sheritz, and then I'm here from Newtown Township, as the township manager. So I'll turn it over to the board to make a temporary chair and then to move forward with the agenda.
I propose that Ed continues in the temporary chair position to get the program started.
I second that.
Do you all agree?
Yes.
All right. So you have a 5-0 approval. Ed, you are the temporary chair.
I looked over the agenda and I think it's worth approving.
Give a second.
I second that.
Yes. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic
Stands. One man.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So
Take nominations for the chair.
Okay, we take nominations for the chair. Who we start with?
I'd like to nominate Ed Johnston as chairman.
I second that.
So, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Election of vice chair. I'd like to nominate Eric Gerst.
I second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Election of secretary. I'd like to nominate Dan Litwin.
I second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, minutes, approving minutes. Did everyone get a chance to read over the minutes?
Yes,
I
I
was
did it.
able
They're
to
fine
read
to
over the
me.
minutes, and I did it 2 or 3 times because it's so detailed. And I don't see much to question. It was 3 months ago, but it refreshed my mind. And I'd make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, presentation discussion, I guess by Stephen.
Yes, so and that's being both townships, were in recipient, received a letter that it came from Eric and Ed related to some questions. And so I thought it would be helpful just to kind of review those together this evening. Both townships are in the process of having a formal written response so that you'll have it as a written response. There was a couple changes made at about 4:45 this afternoon, so that we'll have to get those changes put into a written format. I was hoping to have it for you tonight, but we'll get it to you very shortly. But I thought it really deserved a time of discussion this evening and answering any questions that you may have. I will say that the good news is that both townships are in agreement, so that helps to kind of know where we're headed and what we're doing. So I think there was some question as to the scope, the function, the responsibilities per the two township codes related to your role as the Bartram Bridge Joint Preservation Board. In the response, I actually have cut and pasted the actual area from the two ordinances that talks about what your responsibilities are, but I thought it was good just to spend a little bit of time talking about what each of those areas were. And then hopefully that helps you be clear what your roles are. And just so you know, we've taken some time to do this with all of our committees this year, because a lot of our committees are like, well, what is our real role? Because we've added additional committees to our towns, and sometimes they overlap. And so it's good to just make sure everybody's on the same page. The one thing about this committee is that you all are set by ordinance, because we had two different townships coming together to do that. So you have a more permanent record of what it is that you do, and kind of gives you your authority or what your responsibilities are in writing. And neither committee or neither township, I'm sorry, can change that without going through an ordinance change that both townships agreed to. So the first thing it says, your board shall formulate, advise, recommend, and promote to the respective governing bodies, being Newtown and Willistown, policies for the management, use, and preservation for the board, for the Bartram Covered Bridge. So as I hear that, and just so that you have an understanding what that is, particularly when it comes to policies, you would help formulate them. You would help say, these are the kind of the rules that we should be going by. I think in the past that you've given suggestions like, I think that was partly your all suggestion that we put up the gates to make sure that the bridge was protected so that people couldn't go on there and light fires, right? That was something I believe this board recommended to the two townships. And so that was a policy. You helped to formulate it. You advised, you recommended, and you were promoted that. So those kind of things to preserve the bridge, that's your role. But the actual action to do it takes place by the two townships, and they have to agree because, just as kind of a reminder, the bridge happens to be one of those unique assets is that it's owned by two separate townships. You could almost kind of say like half of it belongs to Willistown and half of it belongs to Newtown, because usually the dividing line is right in the center of where the water is, typically that's where the property lines go. But the other piece that's really unique to this is we're actually crossing over two counties as well. And so, there are some guidelines that are set out that make this work and help give us guidance. And so that's the great thing about what your role is, to help make sure that we have a unity that we present with this. And that's the purpose. The second piece, the second step there was that, the board, being you as a board, have the opportunity to identify and recommend plans and programs to each of the two governing bodies for repair, or supervision and operation and maintenance of the bridge. So again, and I know you've been doing that, you've given us, a list of some repairs that need to be done, and then we take in action on those and move forward. You've, I believe, suggested, or at least it was suggested through you, we have an alarm on the bridge, and those kind of things we put into place. And then just basic operations and maintenance, and then repairs in that way. And then the second part is that your board should be looking for opportunities for federal and state and county and local program assistance in establishing the administration, maintenance, and operation of the site as the historic, architectural, and aesthetic value, and including education services and exchange of information. And you've done that as well, right? You've done that by having events out at the bridge, opening it up for the historic days and those kind of things. And I know that we've, through the townships, applied for a couple grants trying to help assist. We haven't been overly successful so far, but we'll continue to do that. And as your guidance, and if you see things, that's the kind of recommendations that you should be making to us, you know, looking at and seeing what the state has to offer, what the federal government has to offer because this is a National Historic Registry site. There tend to be opportunities for that. Any questions on that? What your role is, what your duties are in any way?
Steve, do you by any chance have the numbers, the codes?
The number of the code, I know for Newtown, the code, I know it's 8-3. Let me look it up real quick.
Willistown is 7-7, scope and authority.
Mhm. Okay.
Very detailed as to what Stephen was saying.
Mhm.
It explains exactly, and the verbiage that he used from his cutting and pasting at Newtown was identical to what I cut and pasted from Willistown, so.
My understanding is the two ordinances are pretty much identical, other than I think the numbering.
Yeah.
Because I think we both number differently.
Thank you.
I guess, I do have a question.
Yes.
So I guess one issue that has been coming up is whenever a request is made for repair or something which is urgent, and the board makes those recommendations, what should we expect seeing back from the townships? What kind of priority? So the priority of the repairs or whatever the bridge needs, because we keep making the same recommendations over and over, but we don't see any action following after that.
So, I mean, I think that you know, if you're putting something in writing as a recommendation that comes to our boards, then our boards should be making a decision up or down whether or not to move forward with it. Because you're advisory, the boards do have a choice. And obviously, you know, I think you made a recommendation this year, you asked or requested, I think it was $250,000, and I don't recall the exact repair. And my understanding is that both townships have budgeted $125,000 each to meet that. And so I hear you, but I'm not sure. I think this is the first time we had a clear number with a clear direction, and we took action. We put it into our budgets. I think there still is, moving forward, the actual, you know, we've got to get an actual scope of work. We'll probably have to bid it out because $250,000 is not a number that we can just go and do a repair. We have to actually put an RFP or you know, a request for proposal together, or request for quote from whomever to do exactly what it is that we want done. And because we're two different counties, my recommendation would be, and this is one of the answers further down, my recommendation would be that we would advertise in our paper here in Delaware County for potential bidders. And I'm assuming that Willistown typically advertises in a Chester County paper, that they would advertise in their Chester County paper, and we would look for doing that. And most of the time, I assume Willistown is the same as us. A lot of that would be done through pen bid, and I am using the right term there, right, George? Pen bid, and we would do that through pen bid. All the documents would be there, and it helps keep our advertising costs down because we basically just say, go to pen bid and you'll see everything that the project is. and that's what happens. And I anticipate that's what's going to be done if that's the project that you all still want to push forth with for this year, to do that. And that's how we would do that. We would, one of the two townships would take the lead, getting it out and getting the bid documents all together. And then when it came back, there would be a contract, and the contract would be between the two townships, and the two townships would have to approve it and move forward. It's a little bit more cumbersome than regular local government. And I say a little bit more cumbersome because I think we're pretty cumbersome in the process, but that's how the code is set up, so that we're transparent. We don't give projects away to our friends and family to impress them and make them better off. It has to go through the process that's open and a public process. And that's what we want to have happen as local government, to make sure that we do that well. Did I miss anything in that, George or Bill?
No, I would just, in history, the board here has recommended different projects that needed to be done. It was budgeted as soon as was possible by the townships. And, I'm thinking back a few years ago, this board recommended that a new roof be put on. And that scope of work was worked up. The townships accepted that request. The work was run by the townships, and the roof was put on. This past year, after some time about working with the engineering firms and the evaluation of the bridge and determining what really needed to be done, eventually this board put together a proposal for the things that were the most important based on that engineering study. Appropriately, they brought it to the townships. The townships budgeted that for this fiscal year, and now those funds are sitting there. So, again, the process keeps going. So I think, echoing what Steve said, I mean, it works, and sometimes it can take a little while, especially when it's a larger dollar figure kind of project. But I think the work goes on.
And another question I have, I mean, I understand that the process is, of course, cumbersome to townships and, the public bidding and stuff like that. The other question I have is that whenever the work is done in the implementation of the work, being on the a class 1 resource has to be maintained to a certain degree of integrity to what originally was there. Who is going to supervise this? Do we have any role into this?
I'll speak on behalf of that. Obviously, there should be some kind of inspector out there to make sure that things are going as planned. I don't know that it's a building inspector. I don't know if that's a specialty job that would need to be done.
I'm not talking about code, Bill. I mean, that's not an issue of the code.
No,
That's
but I'm saying
an
an
issue
inspection
of-
to make sure that things are done right, and you would need somebody with the education on timber bridges, like Lancaster County timber frames. That's who I originally reached out to, Josh. Josh came back and gave us numbers. That's where we got those numbers, and George and I had the conversation that we need to know the number in order to put a budget together and to move projects forward. So,
I just want to remind us one thing, that if a structure like that gets altered too much, you will lose the historic designation and the class designation.
Well, I think that we have a book, Rosario, that describes what the qualifications are and what you need to do in order to do that. I know Ed has his book with him. I actually have my book out in the truck.
Okay.
It gives you guidelines for the correctness to keep it with its historic value.
And all
Rosario,
I'm
I think, again, like for the roof as an example, because it was a completed project, this board, although the townships ran the project, this board oversaw the installation of the roof. The board, Ed was out there, pretty consistently throughout it. I don't think there's any work that's going to take place that's going to alter the historic nature of the bridge, or I don't think this board would recommend such work.
Well, I was not part of this board when this was done, so I'm asking what the role of the board is. That's all. If you tell me that we have still a way along with the process, the board has a way to check and make sure that things are compliant with the historic nature of the bridge. That's fine. I'm just asking a question.
Yeah, and I think what's important is, as we go through even the process of doing the RFP to request for bids and proposals, you know, I think it would be appropriate for this committee to review it before it goes out, to make sure what we're putting in it, you know, makes sense. And if you look at it and say, you're asking for, you know, timber frames that are pine and they ought to be oak because that's what's historical, then that would be the thing that we would have to go back and then change in our piece, you know. And so, and I can't imagine we would get there without that anyhow. I would see somebody from this committee assisting through the process. If we had a question historically, and you don't know the answer, then we would go to resources that do know the answer, because it's in, you know, the townships own this asset. And in order for it to remain an asset, both townships are going to want to make sure that it stays as close to being to the historical as we possibly can. We all know that there are times that in the process, things have to change just because the exact building material isn't even available anymore. But how do we make it appear to be as close to historic as possible and do that? That is the goal. And that's what we would look for in the process.
I guess, and somebody can correct me, because I guess Willistown has a preservation ordinance, and as such must have an architectural review board for the historical resources. We don't. So probably they will have more, if help's needed, they can help us more than we can do on our end, because they must have competent people on that board probably.
I will say that Newtown is in the process of creating a historical review commission as well. I'm hoping that that's done by the end of February, might be by the end of March. This particular property is covered under that ordinance for the township.
Good, very good.
I'd like to speak to that a little bit. Being a board member of the Willistown Historic Commission, we have members that are historic preservation, educated people. The one gentleman is the historic preservation officer for Lower Merion Township. We have an architect that works on historic buildings. Several other people that are involved that know the role and the way things should be done. And we act as a historic architectural review board for Willistown, so that we could oversee it, being part owners of the bridge, and give the input that you're looking for.
No, but that's exactly what I was saying, because I know the people have on your board. I was in Lower Merion and working with the review board over there as well.
Any other questions? All right. So I want to also be very clear that I know the other question that seems to come up quite often is question about, you know, various insurance associated with the bridge and also with you as board members. So the bridge is insured for, I believe, about $13 million. I've just confirmed that this last week again, just to make sure. We also have insurance. Both townships have what we call officers' liability insurance that any board member of any one of our boards is covered under. And so that's covered for the Bartram Bridge Joint Preservation Board, which you are here and what we're meeting tonight. I know the question comes up and has been asked related to the Friends of Bartram Bridge, related to the questions there. And I just want to be clear in that the township's insurance does not cover a 5013C's officers. Okay, if you do an action because you're acting as the Bartram Bridge Joint Preservation Board, you are 100% covered. Well, I say that if you negligently go outside of what the guidelines are of acting as a board member and you're acting out of good faith, that can be an issue. But as long as outside of good faith, if you're acting in good faith, you're covered. I have to give that explanation every once in a while because some people get carried away and go outside of that. But if you're doing what's the best that you can do and you're not purposely trying to sabotage what's going on, you would be covered under our insurance. Okay. And so, but when we move to looking at the 5013C, you all have set that up, and though that both townships assisted in that process, helping you get started, you function unto yourselves. We have other 5013Cs that we have relationships with. You look at our fire departments, we have a Newtown Square and Bloom in Newtown. And so, we have relationships, but we're not necessarily covering their costs. Now, obviously the fire department we give money to, but their actions of their board and all of that is covered on their own and through whatever they do fundraising wise and those kind of things. If you will recall, and I can't speak for either one of the two boards today, I don't know what Newtown would do for sure, nor do I know what Willistown would do. I haven't had those conversations. I believe it was 3 or 4 years ago, George, probably 4. If time flies when you're having fun. And so about 4 years ago, when you all initially got set up, we did cover the first 2 years of your officer liability insurance to get you started while you were getting up off the ground. You came back for a 3rd year and both of the boards denied it. At that time, I had said to you, if you came back with a marketing plan that showed what your intent was to go out and do your fundraising plan, to put it another way, what your fundraising plan was, I would go back to my board and I would contact Sally over at Willistown and suggest that she go to her board and that we would do it for 1 additional year. If you had a plan that would show how you were going to go out and raise funds for the purpose of getting to where you want to be. But just to go and give the insurance and continue to do that and no fundraising take place, both boards said they did not want to continue to do that. And then the final thing that I had here, which we've kind of already covered, was the 22 capital budget. We've talked about the fact that both townships have set aside $125,000 for projects at the bridge. I've had a short conversation with Ed earlier. One of the challenges that we are having today is you went and you got prices last year. Today that same price may be 50% more just because of the supply chain. And so we may just need to really look at that and evaluate and make good decisions. I know, here in Newtown, we're asking the question, what are the things that have to be done in where we are? We on one level, we're questioning, will this stay this way for indefinitely going into the future? Is this the new norm, or is this just a blip in the cycle? Ed, I know, is in construction, and he said, we watch prices go up, we watch prices come down, and it seems like they're on the way back up again. And I think we just have to be smart to see us make the money go as far as we possibly can is when we pull the trigger. And that's not saying we shouldn't do anything, please, that's not what I'm saying. But as we look at it, if all of a sudden it's going to cost us 50% more or even 100% more, depending on what we're doing, we may ask the question, if we wait 6 months, does that possibly change? And if we wait 6 months, what's the impact to the bridge? Because what we don't want to do is wait 6 months and what would have been, let's say, $375,000 because of the increase is now $500,000 because we waited too long to fix a problem and now we have to do a whole bigger problem. So I think we just have to evaluate that. You need to make a recommendations to the board. My suggestion would be any recommendations that you make, you put it in writing. You make sure that your two representatives, Bill and George, have communicated to us, the managers properly, so we can properly do that. And it may require you coming to each one of the two boards and coming in and doing a short presentation as to why this project's important. We get that all the time. I would assume that Willistown does the same thing. We have people that come in and give us a presentation saying, we want to do X and here's what it costs and here's what the needs are. And would you support that? And, we look at it and the board makes a decision and we go forward.
I say one thing, Steve.
Sure.
I can actually reach out to Josh at Lancaster County and try and get his feel on what materials and costs of some of the listed items that on their estimates were, to see what kind of increase, what percentage. Just that'll help move what gets done. Obviously, the education on something like this is very important as to what should be done first, what kind of sequence things should be done. So I certainly can reach out to Josh again for the board.
It's probably a smart move.
Yeah, and within that, when we looked at the project, there's a critical path you need to follow. For example, you fix the structure before you do the clappers. Because if you do the clappers first and then you fix the structure, they could all warp and pop off because you've tweaked the shape of the bridge. And when we wrote the needs list, we broke it out into the structure, the deck, the clapboards, painting, masonry, and the electrical work. So I think what would make sense is we would write up the proposal first and break it into sections. And then talk to the people we've talked to in the past to get their input on it. Because there's a strong chance based on the price of lumber. I watch the lumber futures every day, and it's been going up for the last 90 days. It went down $100 today, but it's still 1,100 and change per 1,000 board feet. Maybe we don't do the entire deck. We do the structural, which is the most important. And we do the bad areas of the deck and watch our budget. But I think the numbers are pretty good. And there's a good chance we're going to get some sticker shock. But for example, Ed just brought some numbers in on the electrical breakers. And the numbers there are under what we budgeted for it. So, I think we were looking at it and being realistic when we looked at the numbers. So I can work with you two guys because I did so much on writing the estimates and stuff. And then we can coordinate that with Ed and the four of us pretty much because we're like the hands-on guys. And then keep Rosario and Dan and Eric, as well as the township staffs, apprised of it through you guys. That sound reasonable?
Yeah, I think as you're looking at that, and what I would tell you is I would also work with the two township staff members just to make sure, particularly as you get into bidding and things like that. I mean, I can speak for George, and I'm assuming the same thing is true for Bill, because I know he's been around for quite a few years working on these things. They know the process, and they can help you through the process and make it more simplified by doing so. So I take advantage of that. And if there's a way that we can bid, that we potentially get the types of bids that we want a little bit easier, I think we should take advantage of those things. The other thing that I would just make mention, as you're thinking about, projects and how we step forward, I think that Bart, you have your understanding is what I think both townships would look for is in times when things are uncertain price-wise, tackle the things that are going to make a huge difference in regards to the last thing we want is to lose the bridge because we haven't done something that we needed to do to it structurally. But if something is more appearance wise and it would cost us twice as much, then do we look at it over a period of time and saying, okay, we'll pull the trigger later on that. So. The other thing that I would think that would be helpful, I know one of the things that we're doing in Newtown is we're evaluating many of our assets, and we're making 5, 10, and 15-year plans. So one of the things that you might try to do as the Bridge Commission is really look at, like, yes, we know we need to do X, and we probably need to do X and Y in the next 3 years. And then A, B, and C could actually be done in years 6, 7, and 8, if that makes sense. Because then both townships can start making plans, particularly, setting aside $100,000 this year for either township. My guess was a little bit of an effort in trying to say, where is the funding going to come from? Particularly since we've been used to setting aside $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 to go all the way up to 100,000 is a big deal. And I know from Newtown's perspective, we actually made the decision to take from some fund balance to actually accomplish what you all wanted to do, because it was a capital expense. It made sense for us. It was not our normal operating, but if the bridge is going to take $100,000 a year in repairs every year for 10 years, we need to think about that differently, if that makes sense. And we need to work to that. And I'm assuming that Willistown would have to do the same thing. But that's you kind of helping us prepare on the financial side to be able to meet the long-term needs of the bridge. Any other questions you have kind of about what I presented, talked about, any other concerns that we have not answered? I know you had some other things in the letter, and we'll go through that. Like I said, we have an answer for everything. I will say this, there was one thing that was brought up. I'm not really sure what the question was. It was the item number 9. And I may have missed, and I noticed here that there was another one. Item number 9 just said reauthorization of the IRS 5013C. Or 501c3. I'm not sure what the question was to the townships. Everything else kind of, I understood what you were, at least think I understood what you were asking. I did not have an understanding for that one. So we just said if you give us more clarification on that, that would be helpful. I would also make note, you asked upcoming meetings to be advertised. My understanding is both townships advertise, because we advertised in different locations. I know that Newtown does. One of the things that this commission ought to consider, I've read through like how often you're required to meet. It just says that you're to meet regularly. It does not say how often. One of the challenges that I think that you face is when you meet once a quarter, there's a long time between meetings. And sometimes you come back and you're kind of, and we have the same thing happen on some of our monthly meetings, but we talked about that last month, but we forgot. And so now we're talking about the same thing again, and then no action takes place again for 3 months. I'm not saying that you should do this, and I'm sure that George and Bill may be saying, what are you saying? But if you need to meet more often to be more successful, your charter allows for that. And we want to help you be successful. So if that's the desire that you have, we would advertise and do more meetings if that's what you want. Okay.
We just sort of make a recommendation, like, let's just say there was a month that let's say in the springtime, if things heated up and we were making moves, we would just reach out to you guys.
Yeah, that's all you would need to do. My preference would be, let's say that, you thought, like, let's say we got into this project and you thought that we might want to meet every month for 5 months. Tell us that so that we can advertise once, because it's cheaper to advertise once. And then we would just set it up that you'll meet every month for those 5 months. Like if you said, we want to meet April through August, just to make sure we're on top of things or whatever, just know that you're not limited to quarterly. Other than, I think that if you started meeting less than quarterly, you're probably not meeting regularly. You know, that word is an interesting definition. You know, it's not defined anywhere what regular means. But so you have the option to meet. I think you would have the option to meet more often. I would question whether you have the option to meet less often, is what I'm saying.
And as a nonprofit, we can meet, right? We don't have to do any.
As a not-for-profit, as the Friends of Bartram, you could meet every week. The townships have nothing to do with that, and we don't have to advertise.
Okay, and we can sort of discuss anything. We just can't do anything, but we can look at.
So if you are making a decision about what you think ought to happen at the bridge, that is the Bartram, that's the Bartram Bridge Joint Preservation Board's action. That cannot be discussed at the Friends meeting towards making a decision and then just come back and vote on it. If you're having a discussion and deliberation about something to happen at the bridge that would fall under the role of the Bartram Bridge Joint Preservation Board, you can't just go do it and have the conversation under the Friends and bring it back. That would be a violation of the Sunshine Act. And so we want to be very careful about that. If you discuss that you're fundraising about something that you've decided as a board here is a priority, and you're doing fundraising, or you're talking about maybe potentially how to provide an event to support what the townships are doing, and you're doing that as the Friends, just like the Historic Society has actions that it takes here in Newtown Square. You know, they could go and they provide the school event. I forget what it's called, George. The school days that they do there. The only thing they do is they just let us know that they're doing that they're using it. And, you know, you would want to let both townships know, yeah, we're having an event out at there and we're doing it as the Friends of Bartram Bridge. But if you were to make the decision what the Friends doesn't, what you don't want to have happen in the Friends meeting is for you to make a decision that we think that the whole left side of the building needs to be stripped off and redone and replant. That really falls under your responsibility as the Bartram Bridge Joint Preservation Board. And talking about that and deliberating about that at the Friends would be a problem unless you'd already decided here that that was your recommendation. And then you took it to the Friends to say, how can we support what we've already decided here? Does that make sense? I just want you to be very careful, because I don't want you to get in trouble with the Sunshine Act. And there's like high consequences and high costs for doing so. And there's only so much protection that the township can give you if you blatantly go against what the Sunshine Act is. And so we just want to make sure we keep the two separate.
Steve, a couple of questions for.
Go ahead.
Can I go ahead? I don't know. I don't want to interrupt anybody. Can I?
Yes.
Okay, I have a couple of questions just for clarity. Let's assume that the Friends of Bartram Bridge wants to do an event for fundraising on the bridge.
Yes.
And we have people and host people there. Who is responsible for those people if something happens? What kind of insurance is going to cover that?
Well, here's what I will tell you. People will sue both of us. Well, actually, they'll sue at least three entities in the process, most likely. They will probably sue the Friends. If you're acting as the Friends and doing an action as the Friends and having an event. They will probably sue both townships because we are the owners of the property. So the two townships will come back and we will, I mean, it's just to give you an example. We rent out Drexel Lodge. And so a group comes in and rents Drexel Lodge. We require them to have insurance to cover what they're doing and to hold us harmless. But if somebody gets hurt, guess what they're going to do? They're going to sue the township and they're going to sue whoever was having the event. All right.
So when we have a historical day, we use the paper mill house or the square tavern.
Yes.
The historical society has its own insurance.
The insurance, they have their own insurance, but in addition, we do have insurance because we're covering in the case of the paper mill house, the township owns the paper mill house. We do not own the square tavern. So when the
but you do own the bridge.
yeah, we do own the bridge, but you brought up the square tavern. So let me just give you an example of the difference. If you had an event, and historic days, I believe both the paper mill house is open and the tavern is open.
And the bridge.
And the bridge, but for my example, I'm just gonna pick two, and we can pick the bridge and the tavern. Somebody goes and falls on the bridge and fractures their ankle, and somebody goes at the tavern and fractures their ankle. They just happen to both do it on the same day for the same event. Both townships would be on the hook, and potentially so would the Historic Society at the bridge. BPG or Equus, who happens to own the tavern, and the Historic Society would be potentially the ones that would get sued or potentially come after. I shouldn't say necessarily. Somebody may just come after and you would try to settle or whatever. But that's typically how those things happen. We deal with those things all the time. You know, I mean, we are public properties. People fall, get hurt, people do those things. We work through those things all the time as part of the process.
I understand.
But when you do an event, when the Historic Society does an event, they have insurance that covers them in addition to what we have.
Okay, I understand. So we need an insurance anyhow. The last question I have for you is this: assuming that the Friends of Bartram Bridge are able, I hope, to raise funds and money to be used for the bridge,
Yes.
who's gonna control those money? Because we will be spending Friends of Bartram Bridge money on your property. How that system will work?
So, I mean, again, I would assume the whole reason for the Friends of the Bartram Bridge is to make sure that that historic resource stays viable for generations to come. I mean, I'm assuming that's the reason why you would even be bothered creating a Friends of the Bartram Bridge. So yes, you are raising money that would be used on a township property. I would say under most circumstances, depending on what was done, how it's controlled would be how much control this group and the townships have over what the project is that you're doing. And so I've always said that if you were to raise funds and you were to have an event to, like you wanted to have a special event to commemorate the bridge, and you wanted to raise $10,000 to be able to have that event and throw it, all you're really coming back to the township for, in that case, either one of the two townships for, is saying, we want to make sure that you're aware that we're having this event out there, and make sure that you're covered and we're covered and we have all that, and we would do that.
I'm afraid that wasn't clear. The issue is if funds are available through the Friends of Bartram Bridge, who has control of those funds?
Well, I think that obviously you've raised them, you have control. The question comes down to so if you had the 10,000 for that, you would control the 10,000, you would do the full thing. You come down and say, we want to put on, I'm going to say, a new deck. We've gone out and raised, I don't know what it costs to put a new deck on, but let's say the new decking costs $100,000. And we would like to do that. The only thing that we would come back and say is that both townships should agree to that project being done to the asset. because both townships own that asset. Just like if, you know, another organization, when the Historic Society wants to do something at our paper mill house, we don't necessarily say no. You know, they come back and they say, they wanted to, what was the walkway that they did, George? I forget what it was called. In front of the building, it was like a rubber walkway. I forget what it was called. Anyway,
Right.
there was a rubber walkway that they wanted to put down. And they came back to us and said, can we do that? We've raised money to put that down. We would like to put that down in front of the place. It's on the township property, but they felt that was the best way to protect the asset that was there. And all we just said was, does it make sense? Is it keep it relatively historical? You know, are we changing the historic value by doing it? And the answer was no, we weren't changing the historic value, and it protected the asset. And so they went and did it. We let them do that process, and it's worked very well. And I think with the same process would work on the bridge, because my whole thought is the purpose of the Friends is for the purpose of maintaining the bridge. I mean, I can't imagine why you would be doing this if it wasn't to preserve and educate people for the bridge. If it's just to raise money and do, seems like you're not being truthful to what you're doing in my mind. But,
No, absolutely. I mean, the issue is not the intention of what is done for. I was asking about the technicality of disbursing the funds during and implementing a project. Let's assume you made a perfect example. The deck, $100,000. The Friends of Bartram Bridge have the $100,000. The work goes on. That work needs to be advertised. Who is going to take care of that? Who is going to control those funds? Who is going to choose the company who makes those repairs? That's what I'm
that's a
asking.
good question. I would think that we would have to probably have some legal advice on that as we got near there, exactly what it was, because if it was a project that we had all discussed as this is a project coming up that has to be done to maintain the bridge, and both townships have agreed that that's a project, and then all of a sudden the Friends have raised enough funds to do that, it may still require going through the bidding process of the public process to do that, versus just saying to the Friends, go ahead and go out and find a contractor that will do it and go ahead and just do the process.
So we need to know this. We need to know this, because if the Friends, in my mind, if the Friends of Bartram Bridge is to continue to exist and have to take responsibility for our insurance and liability and stuff like that, we need to know what kind of maneuverability we have and what do we do with the funds we might eventually raise. Because yes, if it has to be rolled into the township jurisdiction, then I don't see why the township should not make an effort to cover us.
But the way I see it is the Friends are an entirely different organization than the Preservation Board. If the Friends task is awareness, education, and possible fundraising, if any funds are raised and the Friends would like to do something at the bridge, the funds basically would be a gift to the townships.
Yes,
Depending on the scope of what it is. If
Yeah.
it's something like putting a sign up, that's minor. But if it was a major project, it's got to go to the townships as a gift. The townships then would go to the board and the public works directors and bid it out and do that, because they're two separate organizations.
Yeah.
And so I think the Friends are great, but you got to remember it's a different group. And many people wear two hats in the groups.
Well, that's the problem probably, or it is. Maybe the Friends of Bartram Bridge should be enlarged to more people and not just the people on the board.
exactly.
Theoretically, the five of you that are on the Bartram Bridge Joint Preservation Board may or may not be board members of the Friends. You may just be a member of the Friends in support of what they do because of what they, going forward as the Friends were to grow, you may or may not continue it. Like, in other words, the membership should be immaterial in the process going forward if Friends is to function properly.
Well, the only
fact that
concern,
the five of you happen to also be on the, serving on the board, that's because you've chosen both to be in both places. But you could have somebody that's appointed to the Bartram Bridge Joint Preservation Board that wants nothing to do with the Friends. Or you could have somebody that, I think Doug Humes is a perfect example. I believe Doug Humes is willing to work with you. Doug Humes isn't even a resident of either one of the two townships. Doug Humes lives in Marple, but I think he's volunteered to help you all do some things from the Friends side. And that's totally fine, because our boards, the Board of Supervisors for both townships, has nothing to do with what the Friends are doing, if that makes sense.
I
You
guess
guys function and act on your own.
I guess one question we should ask ourselves, this is not for you, Steve, it's just one question we should ask ourselves: by having this double positions, are we creating a condition of conflict for ourselves? Being board members in the Friends of Bartram Bridge and with the township.
I guess I thought with the nonprofit, it was just to offset costs, to raise money, to help out, not knowing what we were going to be able to do with the township. And that's primarily what we thought, to raise money.
Yeah, but then the moment the money are raised as a Friends of Bartram Bridge, we have a strong input with the township in making a decision and suggesting how those money are used.
I remember when we did the bylaws for the nonprofit, we had we had a little bit of freedom there. We were able to do something like give to the historical society, like some kind of freedom that way. But I guess when it comes to actually the bridge, because they own it, that's where permission has to be. So
yeah, I want to be clear
It's
that
gotta
if
be-
you all decide to have an event that's related to, like, if you want to do an event that just says, we want everybody to know, an educational event, neither of the two townships are going to control that piece, because you're doing that as a third party group and doing that. And so, like I said, if it took you $10,000 to throw that event and you were doing education about Bartram Bridge, you're doing that as the Friends, right? If you come and make a decision that you've raised $100,000, or even if you've raised just $10,000 and you want it to go to the bridge and you want it to make a repair, or you want to make a change, then I believe that you have to at least have the permission of both boards. And let me explain why for just a minute so that you understand. Let's just assume that it's not the five of you who are serving in both places. Let's assume that we have 5 people serving on the Friends and we have this group that's serving here, and you're totally different. And the Friends all of a sudden get the brilliant idea that they want to paint the bridge purple. Okay. And I mean, look, that might happen, you never know. Somebody may say, I saw out there that there was this purple color that was the right color. And it was maybe it's somebody who doesn't know what purple really looks like, or, I mean, I don't know, but I had somebody, oops, sorry. I'm not moving enough and the lights go out. My first house that I bought in Phoenixville, my next door neighbor, who happened to be the owner before I bought it, was colorblind. And he went to the store and he thought he was buying barn red, and he bought fuchsia pink and painted all the brick on the house fuchsia pink. And so, I mean, it was really just like crazy, and I didn't care because I was young and I thought I'll just paint over it and solve that problem. But it was one of the reasons why I got such a good deal buying the house, because people went, that's the ugliest house on the street. Nobody wanted anything to do with it. But if somebody did that, I would think as the Joint Preservation Board, you'd all go, wait a second, we don't want that to happen. And so I'm not worried about the 5 of you because you understand and you care about that. You're going to make the recommendation back. But we don't know who will be in charge of the Friends of the Bartram Bridge 5, 10, 15 years from now. The township only controls who are the 5, well, they control 4 of the 5 members of here, and then you make a recommendation of 2 people back to them for the 5th member. So do you understand why we're taking the stand we're taking? And I understand you're saying, well, we're here, we're protecting it, we want the same things. I think you do, but we don't know where the Friends will be 5, 10 years from now. We have to build the foundation and we have to set the guidelines now so it's the same and so that we're covered going forward.
It makes sense, regardless is your property. It will be like a tenant making changes to a property without the owner approving it. So
Exactly.
that makes sense. That's non issue. Just to clarify for ourselves what the role is and how it should be done. That's all.
Okay.
Okay.
So like I said, a formal letter will be coming within the next couple of days. And any other questions that you have, feel free to reach back out to us related to that.
I don't think as the Friends, we would, and I don't know, again, I think it was all about fundraising to get funds to help rebuild the bridge. As far as events are concerned, we really haven't discussed anything like that. We really don't have any plans, you know, this website thing we're working on, but and so, yeah, I totally get that. Money that goes towards a bridge needs to go past you. It's your bridge. And so we're handing you money to saying, here, we're trying to help out. But so when that time comes, I guess, if we're ever plan on having an event, so I know now, being uninsured, we wouldn't do anything like that. We would wait until we make money. And then we would say, we would look into it. But if we ever did have an event, is there any chance that we can like get a rider on the policy just for that one day? Like, is there things like that without us? In other words, can the township board have a fundraiser?
Yeah,
Or
you
not a
know,
fundraiser, but an event at the bridge?
you know, it gets really kind of interesting about whether or not the township can actually do a fundraiser. Because under the second-class township code, it's very clear how we can raise revenue. And if we start going outside of those type of events, and that's the reason why organizations like the Friends are created, you know, because the townships do not have the same authority to do the same kind of fundraising that you would have as a 501(c)(3). You know, if somebody chooses to give money to the township, that's fine. But for us to go out and sell a concept for somebody to give more money to the township, some people could argue that that's a tax that we're placing on them and doing it another way. And so we have to be very, very careful legally how we step forward and do those things. And that's, like I said, it goes back to why it's recommended. That's why there's a Friends of the Library. And the Friends of the Library, you know, our Friends of the Library here, they'll do book sales and they'll do other kinds of things to raise money that even the library shouldn't do on their own. Because of the type of organization it is. It's a quasi-governmental organization and they have to function a certain way. And there's a code that says you can do these kind of things to bring in revenue. And if it's outside of that, we have to be very careful.
That's what I thought. So we're able to go ask for money and then go, here's $100 grand. The lady at the street gave it to us.
Yeah.
Whereas you can't do that. So we're able to raise that kind of money. And I'm thinking, you know, I'm sure this bridge, you know, we keep adding up all of our issues, the numbers can keep growing and, you know, and so that's what I saw with nonprofit. I wasn't really thinking about parties and all these other things, although that might be something we do. I don't know.
Well, and the reason why I bring something like that up, a lot of times 501(c)(3)s will will have events for the purpose of education. And the idea of the education, you know, Mrs. Smith, who knows about the bridge, and you go to Mrs. Smith may be willing to say, I'll write you a $5,000 check because I already value the bridge. Mrs. Jones, who doesn't know anything about the bridge other than the fact that she drove by it, may need to have you educate her on the reason why it's such a valuable resource and that why that would happen. So as part of your fundraising, it may be an event, but also, you know, what I would hope that would happen over time, you know, if you look around the room and look at the pictures on the screen, most of us are a little bit of a generation that's towards the older side, and I don't mean to insult anybody in the room, but we're not 20 somethings, right? My guess is we want this bridge to still be around for our great grandchildren that haven't even been born yet. And if we want that to happen, we have to figure out how to educate all those folks who are going to come behind us to make sure that that bridge still stands. You know, it's a part of that. And that's why I'm saying an event may be something that you're doing that's an educational event that talks about the importance of what covered bridges had in history and why it's important that we maintain it. Because if not, it's easy for somebody else in the future to make a decision. I don't want to put any money into that. I don't want to continue to make that an investment, particularly if the friends aren't there to raise the money and it becomes a taxpayer question. And we're having to make a decision between putting stormwater in to protect somebody's resident, or whether we maintain a bridge that's at that point maybe 300 years old or 400, whatever old it is. So that's where I say, when I said in an event, that's the reason why I would say that I could see you doing an event as the friends to make sure that there's the education for people to make the commitment to maintain this bridge. You know, I mean, I think the townships have made that commitment. I'm not really worried about that. But at the same time, as generations change, will they all feel the same way? And this is one way of the friends helping to lay that foundation and make sure that it's educated well. That's what the Historic Society does over and over and over again by bringing kids in. Those kids come back and they go, we need to preserve this. This is something that I want my kids to experience. Did I steal your thunder, George? Is that what you were going to say?
That was exactly the point I was going to make, is how the Historic Society brings the school children in. They don't make a dime off of that day. That day is entirely about educating and about helping the next generation learn about it. And then those kids bring their parents back. Oh, did you know where we went during school today? And they bring their parents back on the weekends and that kind of thing. But not a dime gets raised during that.
I would like to say you should not need an historical society to bring the school in. It should be the school to have a field trip to the historical resources. The teachers of the school should be the one promoting that in the first place.
So, and fortunately on the school days, it's a combination. I mean, they bring an individual school out, and then in the afternoon, a different school comes out, and they do connect it in. I think they do it, Rosario, in the 6th grade when they're learning about Pennsylvania history, and they tie it in specifically with what they're learning in history.
I have a question on the Friends of Bartram Bridge, and I'd like to move up to number 11 in the agenda, status of the 501c3, if I may. And it's a discussion about the nonprofit status and possible action of Helen Mountain, the legal representative's reinstatement of nonprofit pavers and tax forms. So we've established that the Friends of Bartram Bridge are a separate entity from the Joint Preservation Board. So the question I have is, who's paying Helen Mountain's legal support? Because it's not, the joint board is somebody different. In principle, we can't support the legal fees for the 501c3.
Good question.
I'm sorry, are we still in the first meeting or second meeting? You had at least the two meetings at this point.
In the first.
Are you closing
To
one
be
meeting?
clear,
Because
you're still in the
unfortunately,
first meeting.
I had to go at 8:30. I am on call, so for work, and I cannot stay any longer at this point.
Well, let me make one point. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Oh, okay. The insurance has got to be looked at very carefully because Sarah keeps bringing it up, and he's right, that if we don't have an agreement as the friends to be indemnified by the townships, we should at least have a representation from the insurance company, a by exception type representation. In other words, if you are a member of both, you're considered a member of the insured group rather than the uninsured group. Because always I can see that happening, that if they don't specifically spell out in the policy that the five joint preservation board members are covered, except for running, hootenannies or, other kinds of distilleries or something. So I think there needs to be someone to look at that, because if there's $13 million floating around, by the way, is that for liability or for damage or for what? I mean, that may be a big number for the property. If I'm trying to get the township to attach this portion of our advisory service to the friends. In other words, if they're doing everything that they should be doing, they should be covered, period, end of statement. If they're not, if they're doing the following things, that's when they're not. And who would pay for their representation? For example, suppose, not to pick on you, Soros, but suppose Soros gets individually sued. Who pays for his legal coverage? In insurance, you get a duty to defend. The insurance company must defend you, but if you're not in that group, then you got a problem. So I'm just raising that. I've asked the question 5 times already, and I never seem to get an answer.
So I'll try to answer it again. I thought I was clear. And when I've answered this, when you act as a member of the Bartram Bridge Joint Preservation Board, and you make recommendations back to our boards, either the Board of Supervisors for Newtown or the Board of Supervisors for Willistown, and you're functioning in that role, you are covered by the insurance of the township. If you act as a board member for the Friends and taken action that's separate and apart from what your responsibilities are and duties are as a Bartram Bridge Joint Preservation Board member, you are not covered under the township insurance.
And the question I have is, like what? Like what? What would we be doing that would not be in the interests of Willistown or Newtown Township?
So if you go and do fundraising, we cannot support that, even though it's in our interest. We cannot cover your actions for doing so because it's outside of the charter of the two townships,
Well,
second-class township code.
I
So that is a
understand.
problem.
Yeah, I understand that, but what I'm saying, when in doubt, why not agree that the boards serving on for the Friends will, without further, would be considered a covered party. In other words, the burden would be on the insurance company to say except for, using this bridge as a helicopter port. It says a couple of really way out things that the board. See, I'm concerned that you're not going to get a lot of people to be volunteers on this board if what's overhanging this whole thing is, my gosh, if I have to spend $50,000 because somebody put my name on a complaint that doesn't involve any responsibility of that person, but he still has to lay out the money for his attorney.
I'm sorry to interrupt. If there are no other items to vote on, I really have to go. Maybe I can hear about this, the result of this.
Well, I think we're promised a response to these questions. That, and I must tell you that Dan gave me a number of these that he was concerned about. And I'll wait to hear the answers.
Eric, my suggestion was the Friends are independent, and like other historical societies, they should probably get their own insurance, and it may overlap with what the townships have, so that either way we're covered. But the problem I have is in the startup phase, how does our new Friends have the money to pay the lawyers, the webmaster, the insurance company, and others to get us going before we raise money fundraising? Can the townships make a contribution to the Friends to cover some of these startup expenses? Or maybe it's just a loan on the theory that we will raise some money to pay it back.
I think that I want to be clear that 5 years ago, 6 years ago, the townships did pay for your legal expenses for the 501(c) to be created for the Friends. I want to say, I'm going to back up. I don't want to say your, because I realize some of you may not even been on at that time, but we paid for the creation of the 501(c). We agreed to pay for the attorney fees. We paid for the first 2 years of your officer's liability insurance with the assumption that fundraising was going to happen during that time. As far as I know, no fundraising happened during that time, and both townships said, we're not going to continue to do this without a plan. We're not going to continue to do this without knowing what you're doing, because all we're doing is spending money and no actions happening that we would see as a benefit to the townships in the process. And so I think the townships did offer to do that. The townships may offer to do that again, but here's what I would tell you. I don't think either township's willing to do it again unless there's a clear plan of what the Friends wish to do and the Friends actions the Friends wish to take. And I think one of the challenges that we have is that we keep tying the two together. And I'm going to make a recommendation to you tonight and say strongly that as we go forward, I think that any discussion about the Friends should not happen during this meeting. And that if you want to have a discussion with the townships related to the Friends, that we will have that a separate and apart from the Bartram Bridge meeting. It's because I'll be honest with you, I'm sitting here, it's 9:15, and we've probably spent at least an hour of our conversation tonight, mostly talking about the relationship with the Friends. And instead of working on the kinds of things that I would hope that this organization, that the board, the Bartram Bridge Joint Preservation Board would be working on, we're still trying to work through this legal issue. And we're still trying to work through this insurance issue. And we keep covering it over and over again. And so I think that to be fair to the public, the taxpayers of both organizations, the two townships, I will be glad to have these conversations with you, separate and apart from the Bartram Bridge Joint Preservation Board meetings. But I don't think they should dominate these meetings and allow you to stay focused on what's important and what you are under the authorization to do through the two ordinances that were enacted by the two townships. And anytime I see something related to the Bartram Bridge or the Friends of Bartram Bridge, I'm going to recommend that it be taken off the agenda because I just don't think it's a wise decision going forward, unless we get to a point that there's a final decision made and there's an action that this board has to make to take it back to one of the two townships. I don't think.
I agree with you, and we will come up with a plan as representatives of the Friends, and hopefully the two townships will again support us during the startup.
I think that that's a wise way to move forward.
So I think everybody's in agreement on that. Why don't we move back to number 10, the treasurer's report and the chairman's report. We'll try to keep that brief. Ed, it's on you, bro.
Okay, the treasurer's report. And did anybody have any questions on the treasurer's report? Okay, I get a motion to approve it. Get a second. Do we have a motion?
Did you get a copy?
Did I get a copy?
No, I'm sorry. Did you get a copy?
Dan, did you get a copy?
Dan and Eric, did you get copies of the treasurer's report?
Yes.
I did. It was
Okay,
an
good.
email.
I
We're looking for a second to approve it.
I
second.
second it.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, chairman's report. Not much to say other than last minute Christmas lights. Last minute Christmas lights, and I don't know, is this in here? Oh, yeah, it's in here. That's it. So, new business. I don't know, George, would you like to, you want to talk about the possible gift?
Sure, sure. So I think attached to the agenda, and we're going to talk about the carriage, the 1880 Echo Valley Farm carriage. And I believe it was attached to the agenda, the information. So hopefully everybody had a chance to see a picture of it, see a history of it. Back in 2005, it looks like this Portland Curtin Rockaway carriage was made available to Newtown Township for display. It was the original Echo Valley Farm carriage that was found in the barn there. The family restored it and they made it available to Newtown Township to display. It looks like, and one of the challenges is the records are a little sketchy as to how exactly everything came together. But it looks like it was given by the family under the condition it would be displayed in some kind of a covered situation. In 2005, it was given over to the Railroad Museum at Drexel Lodge Park. I think that they intended to display it in some kind of permanent manner there. And it wound up being stored in the boxcar for the last 20 years, 15, 20 years. And it hasn't been available for people to see. There's not a lot of room in the boxcar to see it anyway. And so the Railroad Museum, and full disclosure, I volunteer at the Railroad Museum. The Railroad Museum's looking for a home for it because it is taking up space and nobody's seeing it there. So we started doing research as to how it came to be there, realized the township took care of it with the intention that it would be displayed. So one of the suggestions that we went to the Historic Society and asked, did they have any ideas for the proper display of this thing? Because if we don't find a home for it, we're going to look up the family and try to get it back to them. One of the suggestions that came up was that perhaps it could be displayed at the Bartram Bridge. There is a connection with the Bartram Bridge. There's a understanding that it probably would have passed over the Bartram Bridge in its time of use at the Echo Valley Farm. So hence, we brought it to the Joint Commission to say this artifact is available for potential display at the bridge. It could fit in very nicely there. It's not something that we're trying to, ram down anybody's throats or anything like that. I did show it to Ed in advance of this meeting to see if he thought that it would be potentially a wise thing to have there. Measurement wise, it would fit at the bridge. It could be moved back and forth when work actually would take place at it. But that's basically the presentation. This artifact is available from the local community right there. It seems to have some sort of a connection with the bridge. And we wanted to ask the Joint Preservation Board if they thought that it would be something that they would like to see displayed there. And if so, then we could go back to the townships and ask their thoughts on it.
I've, in my career, done a lot of restoration work on vehicles. And to be able to store and display something at the bridge would require building a building inside the bridge for weatherization and other things. What struck me about this is in the discussion about the carriage having gone across Bartram's Bridge, 3.5 miles from the bridge is historic Sugartown, which is right beside Willistown Township building. And historic Sugartown has a carriage museum with a collection from the Chester County Historic Society, Conestoga wagon, an old 1880s hearse, sleighs, and everything else. And the historic Sugartown has school visits and events multiple times a year, open for tours. And I would think that would be a perfect place to put the carriage on loan and still be able to have access to it. I mentioned to Doug Hilms about it, that if you wanted to pull it out of there for a Bartram Bridge thing or Newtown Historic Days, you just send a truck to pick it up from the museum. And there's 24-hour security. There's people that maintain the vehicles in there. And that the Carriage Museum is bigger than this entire room. And they hold events in there. So aside from just being a stagnant thing with carriages in it, people come in. A number of years ago at Tredyffrin Easttown Historic Society, we had an ice cream social in the museum, in the Carriage Museum. And then they also have a book bindery where they do marbling and things. And they did a marbling display and we're all eating ice cream, sitting on connoisseur wagons. Bill, you know it well. It's right around the corner from your office. And that to me, this is in top shape. I mean, it's virtually perfect. And you know, I could arrange for you guys to go over there and look and talk to Heather Reefer, the director, and see if they'd have any interest in it, and see if you guys would have interest in presenting it there. And what it could do would be to co-brand the bridge, the townships. Say this is on loan from our next door neighbor. And the Carriage, you know, went back and forth across the creek over the years. So it's just a thought. And you can go on their webpage and check it out and look at the stuff. And I'll send you the information tomorrow, George.
Thank you.
Yep.
You know what, and so this carriage being outside, is it able to be outside on the bridge? Would that be bad for it or good for it? Like, I don't know if we knew those answers. You know,
Having this bridge or the carriage anywhere but in a protected room, it'll degrade.
okay, okay.
I mean, even like in the, you said it was in the boxcar, because I was going to ask you where it was because you can see the plastic cover and stuff.
Yeah. So
that's-
and this picture was taken at the time when it was donated and made available. In the boxcar, it's very tight in the boxcar.
Yeah. But, you know, where you have to have heat and no water, security, maintenance, a wax and clean it periodically. You know, it could sit in the bridge for a day, or it could be put on a display on one of the access roads for a Heritage Day. But that's something I'd keep in my living room.
I'll tell you something to think about too, because remember, I went to the bridge, we have to literally cut the steel gate. We have to make a new cut the steel gate, but there's 2 footers like anyway to cut, unbolt, take it down to get it in. We have some work to do to it. So maybe when all this big work gets done, that kind of work can get done. In the meantime, it could go there and it can visit the bridge on historical day, things like that. Something to think about. So
Yeah.
awesome point, because protecting that is more important than us just putting it on the bridge so people can see it if it's going to deteriorate.
So I guess I'll ask then, is that the recommendation of the Joint Commission that we look at a scenario like that? And if so, then I guess, Steve, should I discuss with the township solicitor, would that be honoring, as we understand?
I think we have to go back and review how the gift was given to make sure that we're allowed to even display it outside of the township. You know, I feel confident that we can display it somewhere in the township, even if it was on loan. But if we did it outside the township, would we be stepping outside? So I think we are going to have the solicitor review it. So I think you're right. If the Joint Commission would give a recommendation that, or at least say that we think that it's not wise to store it on the bridge, that we have a thought that a possibility of going to is the Sugartown Carriage Museum, is that what it's called?
Yeah, Historic Sugartown,
Historic Sugartown.
and it's their Carriage Museum. And one other thought when we were just talking about that, and the fact that it's at the Newtown Railroad Museum, they could co-brand each other.
Yeah.
You know, and share one to another as a venue to go visit.
And so, but what I hear, and I think I think you have a lot of wisdom in what you said, because if George and I both talked about this, and we said, what's the impact of having that, even though it's under roof, it's not protected from
Protected,
the
right.
elements, you know? And so I think that's wise. And so let's us do some more work. But if this board is in agreement that it's probably not wise to store it on the bridge, then we can, but I think it's good that you made the comment that you would be interested on historic days or whatever, bringing it in and tying it, you know, and then we can make note that potentially at the historic Sugartown, or potentially I have another thought here, even in Newtown, that would be another historic site.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, so consider recommending the board of supervisors. We sort of talked about that, right? The 2022 capital budgets. Didn't we sort of talk about that? I did notice one thing that we did that's not on the agenda was the electrical. I don't know how I didn't see that, but it's not on the.
I actually had the electrical is in the budget that was presented to the townships last fall. It's not on that sheet. On the proposal for the costs to repair the bridge, there was a $5,000 line item in the $250,000 total for electrical.
Oh, okay.
All right.
And Ed, if I may, if you were speaking of the electrical work that was going to be done, which was just completed,
Yes.
that was actually approved to be done at the last meeting. So the only thing that was necessary was for the work to be done. So there wasn't a need for an action item on this agenda because the board already took action to recommend that the work be done the last time. It was just the execution of that work that needed to be done.
Okay, what about this new issue that we're looking at? This secondary issue with the service and the meter.
Mhm. So, and Steve, I'll share this with you. So right before this evening's meeting, Ed shared some additional electrical work that needs to be done.
Okay.
It's about $1,200 worth of work.
Yep.
Bill and I quickly thought that seemed like maintenance work that needed to be done.
Yep.
Versus being something that the board necessarily needed to take a major action on. They let us know about it. They got an estimate for it. I would think that we could potentially just do the work because it wasn't on the agenda to be.
And we have a maintenance budgeted for that amount or for some amount just to do maintenance. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have a
Between
few
the two
$1,000s
townships?
each that we would use for everyday expenses.
I think we're fine because it's part of what we budgeted in the process. I think that we could take an action tonight just to put belts and suspenders on it. And what I would say is, if you want to amend the agenda, you can do that because what I'm hearing is that this item came up between Friday and today, that you found out about it. And I would call it de minimis in regards to typically, we're looking at, if you're looking at a $250,000 total expenditure, we're looking here at 1,200 or something like that.
$1,175.
So what you could do is you could entertain a motion to amend the agenda to approve the expense that we found out since the agenda was produced on Friday for 11,000, $1,100, whatever the exact dollar amount is. And once you've done that, then you could vote to take the action. In doing so, let me tell you what that means for us. We will have to amend the agenda tonight. I will have to have one of our people amend the agenda tomorrow morning. We will record your vote to amend the agenda. We will repost your agenda tomorrow. We will not only repost it on our website, but we'll also repost it on the wall out here. I will send it over to Willistown to be reposted as well for them, that you've amended the agenda. And that's the law. The Sunshine Act allows for a change if what you're acting on came up afterwards and is important and could be considered an emergency. I'm understanding that this is an electrical problem. The last thing I want to do is wait 3 months to get an electrical problem fixed at the bridge, because the last thing we want to do is have a fire because we didn't take care of an electrical problem at the bridge. So if that's what you're willing, that would put belt and suspenders on your action. I think George and Bill are probably right. We could probably do it as maintenance, but this would give us a little just extra that we've taken the proper channels. We've gone ahead and posted it, and we've done everything. You would make a motion to amend the agenda for the action, and I would be specific what it is that's being done, and we'll put that under new business 12.5.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda for the for electrical work to be done down at the bridge. Specifically, remove existing 100 amp service at the telephone pole, replace the cable, the meter, and a 2-circuit sub panel. Provide and install new 100 amp service at telephone pole, which includes 100 amp service head, service cable, meter board, 1-inch hub, 4-circuit panel, and 2 arc fault breakers. Grounding as per. And you also notice here, if the breaker, well, I don't need to say that. If in other words, he's saying if anything goes on from the bridge underground, there might be some type of material. If he has to go underground from the pole, underground to the bridge, if there's if the fault breakers go off, which means there's some kind of something's disconnected. And I don't think it would be, because we probably would have a problem now. If there's a problem in the line that goes under the ground, it would trigger the off fault breaker if he had to go dig the ground up and be an extra. But the amendment is for this extra work, which is $1,175 to replace those items.
I would just say if it goes beyond that, he needs to be directed to reach out either to Bill or to George, and then they would make a call whether it's de minimis or not. And if it's going to be beyond that, then we would take it back to our 2 boards to take action between now and the time that you meet again.
Okay. Well,
Let me just say, is this on, I don't know where this breaker box is. Is it on Willistown side or is it on Newtown side?
Willistown side.
And I can't speak for Willistown. I'd speak for Newtown and tell you, we would just inspect it and we would do whatever we had to do and we would just cover it. But can Willistown do that, Bill?
I can talk to the building codes official.
Yeah.
I think most of our electrical inspections are third party.
Yeah.
Somebody like.
Usually I go to, when ours are too, and I usually say, this is for the township building. You are going to just take care of this, aren't you? And if it's United, he's going to say, you've been talking to Steve Neese. And
I have no problem approaching our building official.
Yep.
Yeah.
yeah, if we can do that, just so that we hold that a permit should always be pulled, even if it's on township property. And we hold that it should be inspected, just so that if somebody comes back and says the township did work, yes, we pulled our own permit. We don't charge ourselves for a permit. And 2, we had it inspected. And if it needs to be by the third party, we have it inspected just like anybody else would, so that we make sure that we've met code.
Okay.
And I believe I heard Eric second. We might want to check that.
I was gonna say, can we get a
Eric, were
motion
you
for
the
that?
second?
Wait, did we get it first?
Yes.
I thought
Oh.
you were the first.
Okay, I'm the first. Okay, can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Somebody's gonna have to write this out.
Paris.
Yeah, so George, do
Ed.
you have what the piece was? All right, so you and I will just work on the wording for this.
Yeah.
For the amendment. So that was the amendment. So you have the vote for the amendment to your agenda. Now, and we're going to, and I want to confirm that all 4 of you voted to approve that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
All right.
Yes.
Now, what I'm asking for is now I would suggest that you take a vote on item 12.5 that you added to the agenda, which is to do the work for $1,175. And that would be a separate motion and a separate second and a vote.
So moved.
So Eric moved.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Again, I have a 4-0 vote that we're going to record. So what we'll do tomorrow is we'll repost your agenda
Okay.
that you took the vote. And then we'll kind of condense what you did all that into what makes the motion, what makes the agenda item that you read off. And we'll get that put on, and then we'll have that you voted on to approve it.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Steve,
Yes.
Steve, we are not voting to approve the work. We are voting to advise you and recommend to you that you do the work.
That's correct.
All right, please word it that way.
Yes.
Items for next agenda, update about current costs associated with pending bridge renovations. So I guess it's something we'll reach out to different people, estimates, trying to,
These guys will work, as we talked earlier, on the proposals.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna reach out to Josh and say, you know, can you give us a ballpark figure of what your quoted cost estimates were before?
We've allocated funds for the
we get
repairs. ready to
an
start.
updated number. Today's market.
Okay. I guess we are ready to adjourn the meeting.
I will make note, I don't know that you took action on 12.4 if you wanted to. Because I had you jump
Oh.
over to create 12.5.
Discussion of participation in Newtown Square Historic Day on Saturday, June 4th, 2022. I'm going to say that we always have. Can I get a motion to,
Propose that we go to the June 4th Historic Day, which is anticipated.
okay, do I get a second?
Couldn't hear that.
Historical Day on June 4th. Participating.
Yes, I second that.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's adjourn this meeting.
9:40.
Well, hey, did you get those estimates?
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to turn off the recording.